Thank you, Lisa, and thank you to MediaPost for having us here at this amazing resort and dialing up some really great weather for us. Excited to share the stage with this group today, and rather than me introducing them, I think I'll allow them to all introduce themselves, and I'll ask that you just share a little bit about your roles and why you're up here talking about this post-cookie world.
Hi, everybody. I'm Robbie Giles. I oversee performance marketing for Fandango. So our three brands consumers most familiar with are Fandango for movie tickets, Vudu streaming, which is on-demand, no subscription, pay-as-you-go movies and TV shows, and then also Rotten Tomatoes. So yeah, oversee advertising and CRM for those brands. Second time at MediaPost, I was in Park City this past December. Had a great time, found it very valuable. Good to see a lot of you again. And why I'm up here talking about this, everything that we've seen today so far, Jeff, Matt, Kelly, Imran, they all referenced a cookieless world, what we're doing, kind of strategies that we're choosing to follow to adjust to it. So I just think it's one of the more relevant topics, right, in our industry and obviously in marketing today. So yeah, looking forward to talking about it.
I'm Clayton McLaughlin, Managing Director of Labelium, which is probably the largest agency you've never heard of before, but hopefully we change that very soon. I've been in the digital world for 16 plus years, sort of born and bred in search and all things digital, so spent the last 5 years having this discussion about post-cookie data and solutions and all of the pieces that come along with that. I don't know how many search insiders I've been to. I've lost count at this point. I think we did count at one point. I think I was at 13 of the Park City ones. So I have been to a few of these at this point, but always excited to be back, and obviously I think what's already been said, it's a very relevant concept today, so looking forward to it.
Thanks, Clayton. Hi, everybody. I'm Diane Sidden. It's nice to see a lot of familiar faces here from Park City as well. I'm the manager of audience strategy and analytics for KPMG, which is a big audit and tax accounting firm that some of you might have heard of before. Kind of like Clayton, have been around for a few years, started in SEO and paid search. Then I've been moving over more to audience strategy, analytics side of the house. Reason I'm here to talk about this, it's a relevant topic that's been out there for a while, and I think it's be great to learn like what other companies are doing to combat this and what solutions are coming up, and there'll be a roundtable that I'll be hosting after this as well. So looking forward to hearing from some of you guys how you're dealing with this particular challenge.
Well, thanks everyone. So let's set the stage here a bit, and just the deprecation of the third-party cookie being driven by Google and Google Chrome. Google's punted obviously for now a few years, and G-Day, right, the day of the reckoning, is currently the end of 2023, right, or sometime then if it doesn't get moved again. But one of the things that we've already heard a lot about is first-party data and how important that is. So just want to ask you guys, when it comes to first-party data, how is building this first-party data going to influence your marketing activity, right? How are you going to leverage the first-party data in your marketing activities?
Yeah, I can go first. I think it's probably easier for someone like myself to say, coming from a larger company. We sometimes feel like Fandango is a small fish in a big pond because we are owned by NBCU, but relatively speaking, right, we've got a pretty large team of people kind of working to address this stuff. So humbly, I'll say that we've worked to address it by really planning for targeting and for measurement. So targeting, basically building out our own customer data platform in a way that kind of helps us understand, right, which of our customers might be more interested in seeing certain movies or certain genres over others, and we've been leveraging those insights, that information for several years now. And we find it helps the consumer as well, just get more, if you hate horror movies, like my wife, you really don't want to see, an advertising for the next Conjuring movie. You'll just move right on past it, right? And then also on the measurement side, so more platforms, obviously walled gardens, they're all kind of copying what Facebook did a few years ago with conversions API. So I think we'll see more of that for even some of these exchange networks, working with LiveRamp, Newstar, figuring out ways to tie identities together. So I think kind of leveraging our first-party data, again, it applies to targeting and to measurement. And probably most folks in this room, even on the agency side, have been working with brands for a while to do it for targeting, but maybe just placing ad tags has been the way to approach measurement. I think is changing. That's going to change. So I think it's just important to kind of spend time thinking about that, what it means, and again, looking at some of these solutions that the walled gardens are pushing out, because those are probably going to be replicated elsewhere.
Yeah, I think the other thing when we think about how do we use data prior to campaign activation and understanding the intelligence that exists inside of a first-party data set, whether it's small or large, how do we do an analysis against that? And then ultimately give that the beginning of, okay, how do I test and learn and iterate and get continually smarter and better? So think of data clean rooms in an environment and something similar to that. How do I take my first-party data, look at it with a depth that I'm not going to be able to get, and then combine that with something that might be much, much larger from a scale perspective, so I can find that weird little niche audience. Like, I had a client way back in the day where we did something similar to this, and we found out that the main client, their most profitable customers over the long-term business, 15 plus years, is actually Budweiser drinking truck owners who love shotguns. That was literally an audience that we had created, but it all became more visible to us when we started to dissect the data and used our first-party data with a much larger scaled set that came from some third party. So in those environments, that intelligence is still available. You can't push it directly, but how do you rebuild those audiences over and over, whether you're using a CDP or something along those lines, and then manage it accordingly? So I think that's the other piece too, is like there's the continued collection of first-party data, but then what the hell do you do with it? How does it make you smarter on the front end? And then you have to test and learn your way in, which I think the iteration piece is going to become more and more important as the cookies disappear, because you're going to have to continue to learn, which is why your first-party data is so valuable.
Yeah, and to your point, Clayton, I mean, there are a lot of ways out there you can analyze those beer drinking, truck driving audiences, and we use some of that at KPMG as well, just to get some insights on who this audience is, what their behaviors are. But obviously some of that's going to be going away down the road. So first-party data, I think Jeff mentioned earlier, it's the secret sauce of everything. And with KPMG, one of the things that they've recently done is they've utilized the Salesforce technology tech stack. And so Salesforce Cloud, Marketing Cloud. So now we're able to actually start seeing what our customers, where they're going, what they're doing, through that first-party lens. And then also with Clayton mentioning about CDP, because we do have Salesforce as well, it's something we're entertaining, to starting to think ahead of, okay, with this Google-geddon or whatever you want to call it that's going to be coming up, how do we handle this? And what's the right technology? What's the right strategy going forward? We're also looking into some cloud data warehouse technologies. I believe Flywheel is an example of something like that might be an option that we're going to do. But, again, it's conversations that are happening, trying to figure out what the best strategy is for a company like KPMG.
I wonder maybe, Clayton, maybe you could tell us a little bit more about CDPs and how those work.
Yeah, I love that I got nominated as the CDP guy in the group too.
You want clean room?
Yeah, well, top level on all of those, so we're good. No, I mean, essentially the promise of the CDP is sort of what I ineloquently call DMP on crack, right? It's how do I get the collection of data sources coming from multiple places, not just my advertising and media executions, but the CRM systems, intelligence from sales groups, everything that basically exists. So as you talk about data warehouse, it's the idea that you have all of these disparate data sources in one place, and then this system is supposed to be able to start to make some sort of connections and intelligence. So the idea of like connections between dark data, it is just the idea that there's this infinite amount of data that we have, and how do we make the connections between those? And that's part of the promise of things like AI, is to start to do that intelligence, because for us to be able to manage that even through a strong database is almost impossible. So how do you automate some of those sort of pieces? So that's kind of the promise of the CDP, is these multiple data sources that you can utilize. Obviously, it's much more sophisticated than that, but I think from an advertising perspective, that's part of the promise for us.
And one thing I'll just mention, in my prior life before KPMG, I was at Cisco, and we did try to attempt to implement a a CDP platform. It was very, very difficult, especially in the case with Cisco. They had a very disparate tech stack. So trying to bring all those data provider solutions together and trying to normalize the data and getting that, view of the customer, through all of the different channels and touch points and things like that, it didn't go very well. It's something to be if you're looking at doing something like that, it's not an easy task to do. So just it's difficult, so you have to be very thoughtful. It can take a lot of time to also implement it too, so.
Yeah, so let's just say we get all that first-party data and we do a great job with that. How do we use that for personalization, right? Personalization, I think we saw in the Catalyst presentation, so thank you, that consumers are, they're receptive to ads that are personalized, right? I don't know what the data was on ads that weren't personalized. I'd like to know. But, how do we continue to personalize our media leveraging this data? What are the solutions without the third-party cookie?
I think that maybe the answer is going to be, the specific answer is going to be different for every brand. So I can answer from the perspective, obviously, of a brand that reaches moviegoers. For us, personalization is it's figuring out which movie is right for the given customer, or which genre of movies, right? Kind of summertime, we might be more focused on summer blockbusters, superhero movies, right? Jurassic, things like that. So we want to reach the customers who've traditionally bought with us or browsed with us for those types of movies in the past, right? Which sometimes can be the same, but also is very different from, say, a niche like indie moviegoer, right? Someone who likes to see the Oscar films, kind of now the movies that tend to be made more often by the streaming companies, but that have limited releases in theaters. So we're, no matter which brand you are, which industry you're in, you need to spend a lot of time thinking about how to segment various cohorts, right? Again, for moviegoing, it's about genre, it's about season of the year when you go to movies, right? Even Memorial Day is a big movie-going time. There are people who go every Memorial Day to go see a movie, no matter what movies are in theaters, right? Family movies are another one. So it's thinking about the segments and the cohorts that matter most to you, and then again, where those segments are more likely to be, and taking the time, frankly, right? With cookies going away, a lot of this stuff, we could figure out ways to do it dynamically and kind of trust the system, and I think there might be a bit more of a return to having a bit more of a hands-on approach and willing to dig in and make sure that, again, if you've got 20 different cohorts out there across multiple different platforms, spend a bit extra time making sure that what they're being served is high level, the right message, or a message that fits.
Yeah, to kind of dovetail on what Robbie said, one of my roles at KPMG is kind of looking at our audience, different audiences, and trying to figure out and understand them a little bit better, and then determining, okay, we're going to bucket them in these different groups. What's next for them? With KPMG, it's very big on email, and we do some personalization on our emails, which is good, but again, still kind of a very new process for them. So trying to get them to understand, okay, we need to kind of look at this at our different audiences, what they're, what are they doing, how are they responding to different campaigns, to different emails, to different social channels, and then making sure that we can customize an experience for them to being able to take them along. Because in the KPMG world, it's about a lead. It's, it's not retail based, but making sure that we're taking those audiences down the right path and giving them that right experience.
Yeah, I want to ask the audience here. So who has remarketing as part of their media mix? I think it'd be a pretty big group of people here. So what's the future of remarketing? How do we handle that? Clayton, you want to go?
Yeah, I think it relies a lot on the single sign-on and those walled gardens, but it also, there's log-level opportunities as well, right? So you were talking about API and those sort of pieces. So I think the personalization part of that goes hand in hand, and I think there's also the question of how much personalization and remarketing is too much, and have we gone too far with the cookies to begin with? I mean, I think the shopping cart remarketing that we've all, the Amazons and Zappos of the world, where it's like, yeah, I know, I looked at those shoes 2 days ago, and there they are again, great. But when it's like 14 different things from your cart, I'm like, I put 3 of those in there because I just wanted to get them out of here, and I removed them later, and like, at what point was it just annoying? But neither here nor there. So there's I think the personalization piece of remarketing, and then there's the concept of like, is it even worth it to do this properly in some cases, where it's an odd situation, but I've run into it before, where it's like remarketing actually doesn't do what we thought it was going to do. Like, we thought of it as a conversion tactic, and in fact, it becomes a little bit more of a branding tactic because it doesn't convert the way that it does. But ultimately, we're seeing this greater engagement down the road. It's a long, confusing journey, and I'm obviously not doing a great job of explaining it. But I think remarketing as a whole, it's not going away, but you're going to rely a lot more on the walled gardens and those sort of pieces, and the technical pieces of how do I connect then my first-party data at that technology level, I guess, as opposed to cookie level, which is a little bit different.
Did you want to add anything, Robbie? Or?
No, I would just say I agree with Clayton, and probably less, shoes following us around the internet might be good for consumers, right? We think of it as a bad thing, but I think from a consumer perspective, it might not be that bad.
So, we hear about, there's a lot of buzzwords, identity solutions, flocks, you mentioned clean rooms. What are you guys interested in right now? And what do you recommend to your clients, et cetera? But is there anything that, you really think that brands should be taking a hard look at as we go into this, 2023?
Well, I did mention that, we are looking at a CDP solution with Salesforce, and also looking at some cloud data warehouse opportunities. Still kind of in the early research stages, but one thing I will just offer up is, this is coming, but you need to be smart about what you decide to do, what's right for your business, and what makes the most sense. Especially if you go to something that's a little more complicated with a CDP, you're going to have a team of people, from IT all the way down to your tech stack folks and your marketing folks. It's going to require a small army to get something like that in place. So it's good to start thinking of it now, but also start researching what are the opportunities, what are the tools out there that could possibly help you with that.
Yeah, I would say for us, we kind of got down the CDP path a few years ago. So now our focus is contextual targeting. That was something, again, that was referenced. I think we'll probably hear that reference more over the next couple days. For us, we're a bit lucky there as well, in that we kind of, for movie going, we own like the ultimate contextual retargeting tool, which is Rotten Tomatoes, right? When people look to what to watch at home or in movies, they're oftentimes going to Rotten Tomatoes. So that's certainly fortunate for us. But other things are definitely, I'm not sure I would classify it as contextual retargeting, but sort of good second-party data. What we were talking about just before we came up here, payment partners. So I've referenced Cardlytics in the past, but PayPal, Apple Pay, even American Express, they all offer programs where obviously they have purchasing data. And we've certainly seen Apple Pay and PayPal have kind of boomed over the last couple of years. We see a lot more transactions coming in through those partners. They offer services basically to offer cash back, rewards to their users in a targeted fashion. So again, that's data that shouldn't be impacted, right, by cookies going away. And if there's a way, again, you can offer the consumers value by giving them whatever it is, right? For us, it might be 10% back. If you're bigger ticket items, it might be 20%. Who knows? Even a certain higher dollar value back. That's stuff that has an impact, and those various solutions can offer those in different ways, right? From push notifications to emails to platforms that people go in and check, because obviously more and more people are just, for good reason, are seeking value, right? We're all kind of becoming more and more deal seekers these days. So that's a big one, as well as just kind of conversions APIs and what I mentioned earlier, right? Again, it probably only applies to direct-to-consumer brands, but if you are getting a lot of logins, or you require an email or some sort of identifier that you can really link to an individual at the point of purchase, figuring out a way to link that to the ad impression through something like a conversions API is definitely worth looking into.
Yes, I think there's the technology pieces, there's the contextual piece, and then I think the one thing that I'm most excited about is the idea of these zero-party data providers. So how do you connect directly to a consumer and pay them for their data? So as opposed to working around and paying Google or Facebook or anybody else for their data, how do we, as consumers, actually get paid for data too? And these exist, right? And it's actually fun every day to kind of log in and see, how much crypto I just made. Although that, how valuable that is anymore is questionable. But the idea that as a consumer, I'm now in control of who is targeting me and what data is out there. So one, this data should be more accurate. It's self-given by the consumer, more so, and it has to be accurate to get paid, right? Which is the important piece, because I remember back in the day, Facebook used to say, all of our data is self-reported, everybody. So, and like 72% of all the zip codes in Facebook were 90210, which I thought was hilarious. Which is not a thing anymore because
Our
like
office is
we're
in
all too old for
90210, by
that.
the way.
Wow, so you count, but I don't, right?
I got that.
And that's it, yeah. But I think that the accuracy of that data, the availability of that data, and then the idea that you're creating as a brand even a relationship that is transparent with the consumer, I think is really important too, because you can literally open these apps and see which advertisers are buying your data. And you can say like, oh yeah, that one makes sense, that one makes sense, that one doesn't make any sense. Like, why the hell is that one happening, So you have control, and I think that's as we think of privacy, the privacy piece of the cookieless world, which is where we're supposed to be going with this whole thing, right? Is the consumer privacy element of it. For a consumer to have complete control over that data is incredibly valuable for advertisers, and I think it's something that we get stuck looking at my first-party data sets, these CDPs and some of these sort of things, and it's like, how do we just create this direct relationship with the consumer? And we can do that now. It's actually fairly easy to do, and the best part about that is that you don't have to change the way that you're kind of traditionally used to using data to activate media, because it's not cookie-based, but it's the same sort of activation mechanisms that we've always used. It's just a different data source that we should, in theory, be more comfortable with. And if you want to, you can actually use that data and model against it and get yourself into a clean room and figure out what are these weird little niches and find the shotgun lovers, and life is good.
Great segue there on the clean room. Appreciate it. Robbie,
I drew the short straw. Huh?
Yeah, you want to talk to us a little bit about clean room? I think it's it's a buzzword in the industry these days, and fairly misunderstood is what I surmise. So if you could help us, I think that would be great.
Sure, and I'll say we as Fandango don't actively use a clean room today, but we've certainly evaluated several solutions, and being part of NBCU, they've released a lot of press around NBC Unified and things they're looking to do for advertising partners in clean rooms. I would basically summarize by saying it is a safe way for two different companies or two different parties to share data with each other without actually having to move databases. And so again, you think about kind of CPG, right? If you're a licensed brand, you have data and you want to work with IRI to match it up with purchase data, you can do that in a clean room environment. So you can take exposure data, match it up with who's purchasing, and kind of run your own analysis on that in ways that you might not be able to, again, if you were just leveraging a conversions API through a Facebook, right? Run custom analyses, apply your own queries to the data, whatever kind of the one party who is providing the data makes available. The second party querying that data has the ability to run queries on that. So yeah, there's a few. I think LiveRamp, Snowflake is the big company out there. Kind of they're very flexible, whether you're on Azure or GCP or Amazon. Snowflake can tie it all together. Again, LiveRamp does it. There's also ad platforms. Some of the biggest ones are working on their own clean room environments today. Obviously, Google Ads Data Hub, they tout that one a lot. Yeah, those are clean rooms, only because you bought me a beer last night.
There you go. I appreciate that. Clay, you are uniquely positioned on this panel to talk about how different brands are approaching this, and what are your clients either asking you about, or what are you advising them, and what happens if people aren't thinking about this right now?
And it's weird. I think over the last 3 years, you've seen this ebb and flow, and we've talked a little bit about this too. It was like right before the pandemic, this is the one thing that everybody was talking about, and it was solutions were coming out of the woodwork, and then the pandemic hit, and everybody forgot about everything other than COVID, which makes sense, right? And now it's sort of like, oh yeah, shit, we were talking about that before, weren't we? We should probably start having these conversations again and figuring out what the hell is going on. And Google taps you oh yeah, I remember, we're going to push it back, and we've got cohorts, and we're like, oh, I hate cohorts because it sucks. Shit, I don't even remember the original question now. So, so we're starting to have a lot of those conversations. I think a lot of it depends on the sophistication of the brands as well, and who has a DMP and is now concerned that that's going to be basically useless in a year and a half, or whatever the hell it is. And so it's the sophistication of the client sort of conversation. It's what do you have? What are you comfortable with? What are we looking for in the future? And so we have started to the CDP conversations, the contextual testing again. Let's start getting into those worlds again, so that we can understand the use of context and the importance of context and how that is going to play a role in your overall media pieces. So the zero-party data stuff, like to start to test some of these and see what the value of those is. And I think the stuff that I love to have the conversations now is, okay, let's find a zero-party data provider and test that against one of these walled garden data sets and see what happens. Like, that's really interesting. It's what does an affinity look like versus a self-reported data set that's coming directly from the consumer? And I laugh, like, I've got a lot of beauty clients, so I say Labelium is the biggest agency you never heard of because we're Paris, France based. We're in 23 countries. We're global, but in the U.S., a lot of people don't have any idea who we are. But because we're Paris based, we have a lot of beauty, fashion, and luxury clients. And so I'm doing a lot of research on mascara, which doesn't really make a lot of sense for me unless I'm in my 80s rock and roll days. But I'm getting resurfaced ads all the time, and I know in Facebook, I'm part of the beauty category, which I think is hilarious, right? I clearly not really my thing. So I laugh about an affinity and the value of that, and even the context in some of that pieces too, versus if I can go into an app and say, nope, not me, not me, not me, how much more valuable is that? And so I'm interested to see now, before the cookieless world, like what is the value of an affinity versus self-reported data sets and those sort of pieces. So those are kind of conversations we're having.
Cool, thank you. So I think it's time for us to wrap and maybe open it up to some questions. So Lisa.
Actually, I was thinking, why don't we, since we are doing a cookies roundtable, we can hold off the questions till the cookies roundtable if you guys are amenable to that.
Sounds good.
I just don't know if all these guys will be at the cookie roundtable.
Well, is there any particular question for anyone? We can take it there. I just figured to keep the conversation going rather than trying to just throw out a bunch of questions. So,
Yeah, I appreciate it.
But you guys, thank you. This was awesome. We really appreciated it. Jonathan, you did a great job moderating, and Robbie, Clayton, and Diane, of course, you guys did awesome as well. So everyone, round of applause here. Thank you.